to tell you about one of the worst years of my life. I won't go into all of the hairy details, but at the time, everything I thought defined me, my career, my relationships, my sense of who I was began to crumble. One thing after another, like a series of dominoes. And I did what most people do when life gets hard. I resisted. I fought. I complained and whined. Why me? I tried to control things I couldn't control. I made myself and probably the people around me miserable trying to make the pain stop. And then at my lowest point, a mentor shared this quote from Marcus Aurelius that began to change everything, really. Here's the quote: The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And at first, I didn't get it. I read that line over 50 times, and I just didn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I thought, how could the thing blocking me be the path forward? But then in the middle of one of my sleepless nights, it hit me. My challenges are actually shaping me. They're changing me. They're molding me into who I was yet to become. And that realization really transformed my life. Not because my circumstances changed. No, they didn't, not immediately, but because I changed. My relationship with suffering changed. I'm Lourdes Leeper. I'm a life coach and a mindfulness teacher, and I'm committed to helping people unlock their potential and cultivate confidence and calm.
Thank you for sharing that, Lourdes. I'm Maria Sabio. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and life coach, and I help people transform their lives fast by combining ancient wisdom with modern psychology. And Lourdes, what you're saying is something that we don't often hear, but that we all face it. I faced it multiple times, more than I actually care to admit. It's what nobody tells you. Your suffering isn't the problem. Your resistance to it, that's the problem. Because the hardest moments of your life, the ones you do anything to avoid, are actually the moments that will transform you, that transform us. Most of the pain, we're running away from it, is actually, that pain is the thing that will actually set us free. And, we've all been sold this lie. We've been told that happiness means that, avoiding pain, having no suffering. And we're taught this from childhood, that comfort is good, that discomfort is bad, that success means eliminating struggle. The goal of life is to be happy, and happy means pain-free. So what do we do, right? What do we do when life gets hard? We resist it. We avoid it. We numb ourselves. We distract ourselves. We scroll. We binge watch Netflix or Paramount or Landman or anything like that. And we just stay busy. And we do anything to not feel the discomfort. But here's what psychology teaches us. The research shows that avoidance actually amplifies the suffering. And the more that we resist the pain, the more power we're actually giving it over us.
Yeah, that reminds me of the that phrase, what you resist persists, right? And when we resist and we start trying to numb ourselves in different ways, we actually create two problems: the pain that we're trying to avoid, and then the habit that we're forming to avoid the pain. So not recommended. Buddhist psychology teaches pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. And so pain is what happens to you, suffering is what you add to it, the resistance, the story, the, this shouldn't be happening, and the why me. Epictetus said, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Wayne Dyer said, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. So, for example, you lose your job. That's painful. But then you add in, I'm a failure. I'll never recover. My life is over. That's suffering. Maybe your relationship ends. Also very painful. But then you add in, I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. I'll be alone forever. I've wasted years in that relationship. That's suffering. The pain is real. I'm certainly not minimizing that. But the suffering, the story that you tell yourself about the pain, that's where you lose yourself. And, here's what I wish I had known sooner. You can't avoid pain, but you can transform your relationship with it.
Mm, right. And when you do that, everything really changes. So the question is, how do we do this, right? So we want to go through a couple of ways, a framework that actually changed my life, influenced Lourdes's life, and many of our clients. And the Stoic mindfulness teachers and personal development psychology, CBT, all point to the same truth, but they basically use different language. And we're going to give you 3 transformations, 3 shifts in how you relate to suffering, and each one builds on the last one. So the Stoic principle, amor fati, is the first principle. And Nietzsche wrote, my formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati. That one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not just accept your fate, love your fate.
And I know most of you are probably thinking, Maria, that sounds like toxic positivity. You're saying I should love my pain? No. That's not what we're saying. We're saying stop fighting reality. In mindfulness, we practice radical acceptance, right? Accepting what is exactly as it is without judgment. Not because you like it, not because it's fair, but because it already is. So imagine you're swimming in the ocean and a wave crashes over you. You have 2 choices. One, fight the wave, thrash against it, scream, this shouldn't be happening, get tumbled, exhausted, and panicked. Or you can dive under the wave, accept its power, move with it, flow with it, and then surface calm and intact. The wave doesn't care which you choose, but your choice determines your outcome. It's the wave is going to do what it's going to do, but your choice determines whether you suffer or whether you, emerge less tossed about.
Carl Rogers said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. It's the same thing with circumstances. The sooner you accept them, the quicker you can change. When you stop resisting your pain and you accept it, it's hard. And, it hurts, right? We're not going to say that it doesn't. And it's present, right? It's right in your face. And you stop adding suffering to the pain. Acceptance isn't passivity, it's power. It's saying, I see reality clearly. Now I can respond skillfully. When you're suffering, you need to pause and take 3 deep breaths and maybe say this out loud. This is hard. This hurts. It's here. It's present. But I accept what is. Not, I like this. Not, this is fair. Just, this is what is. And that's the first transformation. Let's go back to that Marcus Aurelius quote that Lourdes shared earlier. The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes. The obstacle to our acting, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The obstacle is the way. What stands in the way becomes the way. And that's the second transformation.
In Zen Buddhism, they talk about the beginner's mind, right? Approaching every experience, even painful ones, with curiosity instead of judgment. Not why is this happening to me, but what is this here to teach me? Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset shows people who see challenges as opportunities to learn are more resilient, more successful, and more fulfilled than those who see challenges as threats. So when you're suffering, you have a choice. You can either go into victim mindset, this is happening to me, I'm powerless, this is unfair, I'm broken, or you can adapt a growth mindset and say, well, this is happening for me. What is this teaching me? How am I meant to grow from this? Who am I becoming through this? So it's the same pain, but completely different experiences, right? I had a client, a successful entrepreneur whose their business collapsed during COVID. He lost everything, savings gone, reputation damaged. He was devastated. He came in thinking that his life was over, that he was a failure, and that he'd never recover. Through our work, we question these beliefs. I asked him to consider what if this isn't the end? What if this is the beginning of something that he couldn't see yet? Of course, he looked at me like I was crazy. So I gave him a challenge. I said, for the next 30 days, I want you to journal every night with one question. What did today's struggle teach me? Of course, he resisted. He didn't want to do it, but he agreed. And over the course of 4 weeks, he learned he was more resilient than he thought he was. He learned who his real friends were. He learned that he had built a business that he didn't even like, and that he'd been chasing money, not meaning. And his biggest lesson was that he learned what he actually wanted to build. About 6 months later, he launched a new business, smaller, more aligned with his values, more fulfilling. He told me, losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to rebuild from truth instead of ego. He didn't avoid the pain. He didn't pretend it was easy, but he changed his relationship with it, and he became a student instead of a victim.
Wow. That's a great example of what happens when you implement certain principles into, how you react to life. And that's, what happens when you reframe or zoom out. It's an opportunity for you to reassess that part of your life is pivoting, and it's, you have to pivot into a new beginning. So when you're suffering, when life isn't giving you what you want, there's a couple of things that you can just ask yourself, a couple of questions. What is this teaching me about myself? What strength is this building in me? What belief is this challenging? That's a real, big question. What belief is challenging me? And then, who am I becoming through this? Who do I want to become through this? And what's the opportunity? Your suffering is either, wasted pain, or it's your greatest teacher. Let me move on to the last transformation number 3. The Buddhism, first of all, teaches us that non-attachment, holding life with an open hand, not a clenched fist attitude. And psychology research shows people who try to control the external circumstances or external outcomes are more anxious, they're more depressed, and they're more stressed. And the people who focus on controlling their responses, they're actually more peaceful, they're more resilient, and they seem to be more fulfilled. And here's what I wish I knew sooner. Surrender isn't weakness. It's the ultimate power. Most people think surrender means giving it up, and it doesn't. Surrender actually means I release what I can't control. I focus on what I can. And Epictetus, he taught us something. I'm going to give you his quote. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. Freedom comes from focusing only on what's ours. And that's the Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control. And this is a foundational principle.
Yes. And, it's a real game changer when you realize there are things that are within my control and there are things that are not. And so here's a list of things that, you can control, or rather that you can't control. For example, other people's choices, whether or not Lourdes makes a mistake, the past, the outcome of your efforts, external circumstances, whether people understand you, whether or not your life is fair. And here's what you can control: your thoughts, your attitude, your responses, your effort, your values, your character, and your next step. When you're suffering, ask yourself, am I trying to control something I can't control? And if the answer is yes, then let it go. Just let it go.
I had a client. I just want to share this quick experience that I had with this client. She had a daughter who just cut off contact with her, no explanation, just a silent treatment. And she was devastated. My client was. She spends months obsessing, what did I do wrong? How do I fix this? Why won't she talk to me? Questions like that. And she couldn't sleep, she couldn't focus, she couldn't function. And I started a conversation with her, and just one question: can you control whether she reaches out? Obviously not, right? So she said no. And then I asked her, can you control how you feel about it? And she said, no. Can you control whether you spiral in anxiety or whether you find peace even in this pain? And that's when she really thought about it. And she said, I think, maybe I can, maybe yes. So she was open to something. And I taught her a mindfulness practice. So every time that anxiety came up, she had a mantra she would say. I can't control her. I can control my peace. I surrender to the outcome. I trust the process. And, nothing works immediately, but it started to work for her. She practiced it every day. And, every anxious thought that came up, she practiced surrendering and trusting. And, about 3 months later, she told me that she felt, this is her daughter didn't come back, but she started to feel like herself again, that she had herself, who she was, back. And she's, didn't feel like, she felt like, I'm not controlled by the pain anymore, is what she said. And then later in the year, her daughter, actually came out and reached out to her, and they started to build a relationship again. And she didn't get peace because her daughter actually came back. She already had her peace. Her daughter came back because she found peace. When you stop trying to control what you can't control, you really liberate yourself. You become free. And, ironically, what happens is that you often get what you were desperately chasing.
That's a really big challenge for parents, is coming to the understanding that we can't control our kids. We can guide them, we can offer them advice, but ultimately they're going to do what they're going to do, and that's really challenging. And it brings up a lot of suffering.
Of course. I mean,
So-
you're not control. You can't control them, and kids go through phases, and I think we all went through a phase where we didn't really want to talk to our parents all the time, right? I mean, not as extreme as disappearing on them, but disappearing in a way.
Yeah. And so, when you're suffering, maybe make 2 lists. A list of the things that you can't control, and write it down, say it out loud. I release this. I surrender this. And then with the list of what you can control, write that down and allow yourself to focus there. Remind yourself, this is where my power lives. So here's a mantra to try. I surrender the outcome. I control my response. I trust the process. That's the third transformation. So here's your daily practice, 10 minutes that will transform your relationship with pain. Your morning practice in 5 minutes. Start with a practice of mindful breathing. Maybe close your eyes, breathe deeply, and just really feel your presence. Allow yourself to be present in the moment, right here, right now. And just give yourself that kind of pause, that feeling into presence for yourself on a daily basis. And then use an acceptance statement. Perhaps say this out loud: whatever comes today, I accept it. I can't control circumstances, but I can control my response. And then cultivate a growth mindset by asking, what might today teach me? What are my current challenges? Whatever I am facing in my day, in my life, what are they teaching me? How am I growing from this? And then practice surrender. Visualize an open hand and say, I release what I can't control. I focus on what I can.
I love that mindfulness phrasing, and it really just brings you back into your center. The other thing that you can do is practice throughout the day, pausing, and when you feel that suffering or any discomfort comes up, take a pause. Take those 3 conscious breaths, like Lourdes was saying, that mindfulness, and accept and acknowledge that this is hard, right? That you're in some sort of pain or discomfort, that it hurts, and that it's it's happening right now. Bring you back to being present, and take a second to ask yourself, what is this teaching me, and what can I control? And then just surrender it, because you have to let it go. And maybe another mantra is, I release the outcome. I trust, trust the process. And when you respond, always act from your values, not from your pain. And then at night, you take 5 minutes, and we love to do this because it really helps again to center you before you go to bed. Do a little journaling and ask yourself, what challenged me today? What did I learn from it? How did I grow? And always, what am I grateful for, even in the difficulty? And then again, just let it go. Visualize releasing it, take 5 deep breaths and say, I did my best and I let go. And then, tomorrow is a new day. If you try this for 30 days, you'll really start to notice that pain doesn't devastate you like it used to. You recover faster from the setbacks. You start to see challenges as growth, as an opportunity, not as a threat to you. And you actually start to feel that you're more in control of yourself, even when life is chaotic. And that's not theory, that's really transformation.
Mm, yeah. You remember the worst year I mentioned? At the time, I thought I would never recover. I thought the pain would destroy me. But that year, that terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year, was actually the beginning of everything good in my life now. It taught me who I really was beneath the roles and achievements. It taught me what actually mattered, not success, not approval, but integrity, connection, purpose. It taught me that I was stronger than I ever imagined. And it also taught me compassion for myself and for others who are suffering. And and here's what I wish I knew sooner. I didn't need to be saved from that year. I actually needed to go through it. The pain wasn't the enemy, it was actually the sculptor carving my character, allowing me to transform through it. We see these stories of transformation all of the time. The woman who lost her child and now helps other grieving parents find hope. The man who battled addiction and now runs a recovery center helping to save lives. The executive who was fired and built a business that actually aligns with his values. Their pain didn't destroy them, it transformed them.
This reminds me of people that love the phoenix rising. We forget that the phoenix has to go through the flame in order to transform, and that those are our life challenges. It's not a flame that we're going through, but every little challenge is transforming us. And you might be going through something hard right now, or you will be soon, or you just came out of something that was really hard, because that's what life is like. You can resist it, you can fight it, you can let it make you bitter, you can let it make you small, keep you afraid, or you can accept it, learn from it, surrender to it, and let it make you wise and compassionate and unshakable. Who you'll be on the other side of this, someone transformed, really, because it reminds me of Rumi's quote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." And your suffering, it's not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your transformation. The pain you're running from is the very thing that's going to set you free. So stop running, lean into it, accept it, learn from it, and surrender to it. And, watch and see who you become.
Yeah. When we allow our experiences, our challenges to teach and transform us, to really allow us to evolve, that's a real game changer, right? Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Life will be challenging. It will present to you painful circumstances. That's guaranteed. But whether it leads to suffering or transformation, that's your choice. Your pain has a purpose. Let it transform you.
For more wisdom and resources to architect your transformation, look for our book, A Path to Resilience, Small Steps to an Unshakable You. It blends mindfulness, the concepts of positive psychology, and stoicism. It's a year-long companion, and it's a year-long companion that imparts daily wisdom based on values of courage, justice, and self-discipline. And it's now available at Barnes & Nobles. It's available online on Amazon and other vendors.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We're walking this path right alongside you. Take care of your heart. Take care of your mind. Take care of yourself. And support our work by liking, following, subscribing, and sharing this with someone who needs a reminder that they're actually stronger than they think they are. We'll see you next time.